morning, colleagues. I'm present.
Good morning.
Mr. Maluti-A, Chair.
Morning, Chair. Morning, colleagues. I'm present.
Good morning.
Chair, Mr. Mulder.
Good morning, Chair. Good morning, all. I'm present.
Morning.
Chair, those are all the members on the platform, and others may currently. So we're correct. We may proceed with the meeting, Chair.
Thank you very much. We'll see if other members will join us along the way. Can we have the agenda, please? Thank you. I declare this meeting open and you are all welcome to the meeting. Can we have apologies?
Chair, I have not received any formal apologies as yet, Chair. I'm assuming other members may join us during the course of the meeting, and if I receive an apology, I will alert you to it, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. Can I have a mover and a seconder for the adoption of the agenda? Members, we have a mover and a seconder for the adoption of the agenda, please? Oh, there we
Chair,
have.
Mr. Mbiani.
Honorable Mbiani.
Chairperson, thank you for the opportunity. I rise to propose that we adopt the agenda as flighted. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Honorable Motaung.
Thanks, Chair. I second the adoption of the agenda.
Thank you. Our agenda is duly adopted. So we will be receiving a briefing from the Free State Department of Economic, Small Business Development, Tourism and Environmental Affairs on the status of implementing the Maluti-A-Phofung SEZ. The purpose of the meeting is to engage the Free State Department as well as relevant stakeholders on the development and plans of the Maluti-A-Phofung Special Economic Zone. And then later we will get a briefing by the Free State Development Corporation on the status of the Botshabelo and Phuthaditjhaba industrial parks. So the purpose of this briefing in this meeting is to engage with the department, Free State Department, as well as the relevant stakeholders on the development and plans for these industrial parks, as these industrial parks have received funding from the Department of Trade, Industry and Competition as a part of the revitalization of industrial parks program of the department. So from the DTIC, I see we have Mr. Chief Director Molafani. Is that the leader of the DTIC team, Mr. Secretary?
Chair, Mr. Molafani is on the platform. Dr. Mukabani, I don't see her on the platform, would have left, but Mr. Molafani can address the committee in the absence. Yeah?
Okay. And then from the Free State, we have the MEC, Mr. Mohale. So can we just hand over to DTIC first, and then we'll go to the Free State MEC, Mr. Mohale. Mr. Molafani.
Thanks very much, Honorable Chairperson. Yes, my name is Maluti-A-Phofung. I'm the Chief Director responsible for Special Economic Zone. I think there's not much to say from our side, Chair. Suffice to say, we are here to support the members of Parliament and so as well as the Free State insofar as clarifying some of the issues. But let me hand over back to you, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. As I hand over to the MEC, I just want to indicate, MEC, that you have until 10 o'clock. That's just under an hour for your briefing. And then the Free State Department of Economic Development will also have until 11:15. We'll break for tea, and then we'll have a question and answer session. Thank you very much. So over to you, MEC. Mr. Mohammed.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair of the Portfolio Committee. Greetings to members of the committee and other stakeholders invited here. I would like to thank the committee for this opportunity granted to the Free State Province to come and present before the committee on the status of the Maluti-A-Phofung Special Economic Zone, as well as the status of industrial parks in the province. With me, Chair, I have the two Chief Executive Officers of both the Maluti-A-Phofung Special Economic Zone, as well as the CEO of Free State Development Corporation, as well as the head of the department, as well as the relevant senior manager on the department sides, Mr. Tiseto Machele, who is responsible for industrialization and sector development, as well as, speaking under correction, I see the COO of the FDC is here, as well as the CFO of Maluti-A-Phofung Special Economic Zone. With the indulgence of the chair, I'll just make some introductory remarks and request the chair that the substance of the presentation be made by the relevant CEO of Maluti-A-Phofung Special Economic Zone.
Thank you. Thank you. You've muted yourself now.
Oh, okay.
Okay, now I can hear you. You may proceed.
Okay. Oh, my apologies. I'd just like to start by indicating that indeed the Free State Province is one of those that have had an opportunity to have the Special Economic Zone in its area. The processes which have started in 2013, when the then MEC appointed the Free State Development Corporation to be an implementing agent to roll out the process of the zone. At the time, it was done under the erstwhile legislation, and the area was identified to be an industrial development zone in terms of such dispensation. And fast forward, once the processes were in place, the processes unfolded throughout, even during the transition into the new dispensation in terms of the Special Economic Zones Act of 2014. What does then happen is that the FDC, as an implementing agent, was a license holder at the time, and the Maluti-A-Phofung Special Economic Zone company was established to be their operator, which is still the current license holder. Like all other, I suppose, special economic zones, the issue of transition, because of the differences in terms of the form and shape between the two legislation, has also affected us in the province of the Free State, in terms of which we are currently having a situation where the Free State Development Corporation was the license holder and its subsidiary is an operator. And as a result, there have been some other problems of governance which we have encountered. So in 2019, we have started a process to try and address all of those, where we intended to separate completely the authority and the control of the MAP SEZ, if I may call it that way, as a company from that of the holding company, which was a Free State Development Corporation. Because unlike in other areas, the license holder here is not the executive authority, but it was done under the auspices of the Free State Development Corporation. So there's always been a gap as to actually who is the MEP-SEZ entity in terms of the new act, who's the operator, who's the license holder. But that is a matter that we were able to deal with, even though not as envisaged, because we envisaged the situation where the license holder would be the executive authority representing provincial government, and at least FDC be the entity and the MEP-SEZ be the operator. Unfortunately, such could not happen because we could not get an approval from Treasury to establish a Schedule 3D company so that we can achieve that. However, for the reasons that they have provided, that they are unable to grant new entities be established. But notably, what we have done as a province of the Free State, we have tried to find a middle ground, another form which will still achieve the same objectives. The objective being to have the clear lines of accountability between the operator as well as the license holder. So what we have then done, because we could not establish a new company, we used the same existing MEP-SEZ and changed the control in the MOI and all the other pertinent provisions, which really made it very difficult, which blurred the lines of accountability between the holding company as the FDC as well as the operator, which was its subsidiary. So in that MOI, we're able to deal away with the provisions which allows the FDC to also sit on the board of the MEP-SEZ and also take some authority away from the FDC, such as the appointments and so on, which ordinarily would have been done by the shareholder, but to allow the original shareholder, which is executive authority, to deal with that. And that has went a long way because now we're able, in terms of the form and shape, other than the issue of ownership as to whichever one is the subsidiary of who, other than that, at least the MOI of the MEP-SEZ reflects it as a company on its own, which can operate independently, safe to the effect that it is a subsidiary of the FDC. So we thought we could just have to do something because we couldn't allow the situation to go on as. I must indicate, Chair, that we have started well as a province on our SEZ, and we encountered only one major challenge or two somewhere along the line, I think 2 or 3 years, around about 2017-18, which was in relation to during the rollout of the infrastructure in the zone. Or perhaps if one may indicate that the zone was done on what was on at the land which had some factories existing there, which were inherited from the erstwhile Phuthaditjhaba government at the time, that Bantustan, which after 1994 inherited by the Free State government. So the large part of the zone, yes, much as it was a greenfield, but there was some certain portion which also had some facilities in, and that necessitated some of the infrastructure that had to be rolled out in the zone. And due to some of the administrative challenges in terms of keeping up to the contractual stipulations, we experienced a situation where issue of funding has to be kept in abeyance till those matters were resolved, and to a point where one of the attributions to that effect was the fact that there have been that arrangement of governance where there were no clear lines of accountability. That is why the first thing that we have done was to try and address the governance issues so as to allow that particular clear oversight on the entity. So having said that, all those were addressed. We had to have an interim board while we were dealing with the transition. And after that, we finally, in the month of November this year, able to appoint now a permanent board in line with the new MOI. And I think the zone now is ready to continue as normal, having addressed all of those governance issues. And we hope that the engagements between the management of the zone as well as the DTI will be quite easy. They can now be able to find one another in reconciling whatever issues which just affected the smooth rollout. But nonetheless, as members will see in the presentation, more progress has been made. There is hope. We have started to pick up post-COVID in terms of the new pipeline that we've managed to build in the space of 2 years. So that is a good indication that the zone, I think, will be back on track. The only challenge which we have is the issue of funding, in terms of which the province of the Free State has not, since 2017, been able to capitalize operations sufficiently in the Maluti-A-Phofung. So that also affects some of the operations there. We are not an exception to the scourge of vandalism, which key of the infrastructure gets vandalized and affects the zone, as well as the problems of local government also affecting the zone in terms of electricity and water. It really discourages a lot of our tenants. So, but we are not folding our hands. We are trying to look for other options. We have made some applications to the DTI to try and salvage some of the situation on the infrastructure side. Some have not been successful, but some are in progress, as I was told. But that's basically where we are, despite all the challenges, at least as the presentation unfolds, we'll be able to see some of the good work that we've been able to achieve in the zone. And the working together amongst all the stakeholders, I think, has made us to be where we are, despite that we are one of those provinces with the smallest economies with a share of 5% of the GDP. And that also translates into our budget, because the only money that we could give to the zone does not exceed 20 million a year for their operations. And if you look at what is needed for them, is by far exceeds that. But nonetheless, we have kept the light burning, Chair. And with your indulgence, Honorable Chair, I would like to, through you, hand over to the CEO to take us through, in summary, because we have many slides. You can just deal with the issues which I've not dealt with, to just zoom directly to the key issues. Thank you very much, Honorable Chair.
Thank you very much. CEO.
Thank you, Honorable Chair and Honorable members, as well as the Honorable MEC. As indicated by the MEC, I will just zoom into salient points which the MEC didn't cover. It's safe to say that we were designated on 10 and 38 hectares of land at the time of designation as a brownfield, as alluded by the MEC. At the time of designation, we had 64 factories. 39 are occupied by the FDC tenants, and 5 of those factories are occupied by the SSZ investors. We have 20
Sorry,
vacant...
CEO, who's sharing your presentation?
Okay.
I see you have co-hosting rights. Are you sharing your own presentation?
Tisetso, are you sharing? Or Sifo?
I'm not sharing. I can see we haven't been given the rights to share.
But the CEO has the rights.
Chair,
Okay.
Ms. Matsisi has the rights now, Chair.
Okay. Yeah. So please share your presentation. Are you coming right, Ms. Matsisi? There we go. Can you put it in slide mode, please? Thank you. You may proceed, CEO.
Okay, we are on slide number 7. Okay. There are 22 investors operating within the special economic zone as we speak, and 18 of those investors are emanating from the previous FGC tenants, and the newly attracted investors, which are 4 attracted since inceptions, also operating under the SEZ regime. If you go to slide number 8, this is just a synopsis of those investors and their investment value. We've got Stenberg Pork, which is a pork abattoir from Denmark. We've got Number One Hair, which is a manufacturing of hair, synthetic hair, that is being established within the zone. We've got Intabazwe Agri, who are into agro-processing and warehousing. And lastly, Valley Chemicals, who are an establishment of a chemical blending facility, and the combined investment value is to the tune of 1.25 billion. As alluded earlier, that at the time of designation, the FGC as an entity already had operating investors, and in line with the SEZ Act, these investors should be migrated to the FGC. Chairperson, I don't know if I can just, highlighted the investors that we are already engaging within the SEZ. And those are the investors in line with their sectors. We've got the ones manufacturing, which are being established under textile, under agro-processing, under logistics, under general processing. And those are the investors which are still under the FGC. And we are in a process of migrating those investors to the SEZ. Going to slide number 11, Chairperson, I think this is what is making the SEZ to be in existence. We have a very viable and visible investment pipeline. This is a synopsis of the investors that we have engaged and attracted since we started operating in 2017, after we were granted an operator permit. Since inception, we have engaged the key investors, and the SEZ submitted 2 of those applications to the TTIC in the absence of our capital budget to fund their top structure funding. And additional 3 applications were submitted for top structure funding to the TTIC in 2018. 4 more applications for top structure funding were submitted to the TTIC in August 2020. And in 2020, we had 2 investors that we applied a different funding model where we encouraged investors to utilize their own funding in the absence of a capital budget. And those 2 investors, which is Stenberg Pork and Intabazwe Agri, are operating currently within the zone. And the total investment value of this pipeline since 2017 is sitting at the tune of 5.1 billion. In terms of the leases signed, Chairperson, we have 1 lease agreement that we entered into with Cavalli, and the investment value is 383 million. There were also 3 additional leases that we have entered into in 2019, which is Number One Hair Industries, Stenberg Pork, as well as Intabazwe. And these investors, as mentioned earlier, are operational, and their investment value is sitting at 1.25 billion. We have actually aligned this presentation to the terms of reference of the portfolio committee chair. So we thought it was also prudent to just market these investors in accordance with the years that we have been engaging them. So going to 2020, all those investors which I listed here, which is Moland, Tech, Afristache, and Lightfield, as well as Agnificent, with the investment value of 3.6 billion. They were engaged in 2020, and they were taken through the due diligence process, and their projected jobs are estimated at 218. Their applications for top structure funding were submitted to the TTIC on the 19th of August 2020. However, these applications were also put on hold by the investors due to the impact of COVID-19 on their business plans. As part of the investment promotion, Chair, process. These applications form part of our pool of potential investors and are contacted from time to time as most of these leases were concluded. Emanates from the investment pipeline. So we still have these investors in our pipeline. Going to investors which were attracted in 2021 and were approved by the board on the 21st of February in line with Section 38 of the SEZ Act. These applications are at various stages of due diligence to be articulated in the following slides in detail. So in 2021, we engaged Ubuntu Foods, and this is one of our hottest leads. They're into manufacturing, packaging, and distribution of dry powder food. Their investment value is sitting at 255 million, and they're projecting to create 75 jobs. So we've got Intabazo Minerals, which are anticipating to establish a storage and handling of manganese to the tune of 33 million in terms of their investment value, and they are projecting to create 50 jobs. We've got Saratani Beverages in terms of their operations. They want to establish a beverage production and distribution facility, and the investment value is anticipated at 655 million, and they're projecting to create 400 jobs. NTTA Investment is an establishment of a rabbit abattoir, and their investment value is sitting at 229 million, and they're projecting to create 66 jobs. Lichama Holdings is one of the existing FTC clients that wants an expansion. They are manufacturing toilet paper and paper products manufacturing. Their investment value is sitting at 57 million, and they're projecting to create 160 jobs. And lastly, Chair, we've got Zuko Foods, which are anticipating to establish manufacturing of maize snacks, and the investment value is 33 million, and their projected jobs are sitting at 20. This pipeline for 2022 is sitting at 1.2 billion and is anticipating to create 771 job opportunities. Going to this current year in terms of the investors that we've engaged, as mentioned earlier, that there's still an appetite and a zest of investors to come to invest within Maluti-A-Phofung Special Economic Zone despite our challenges, meaning that we are on the right track and we are sitting with a very lucrative pipeline. We have engaged most firms in this current financial year, which are manufacturing ginger and turmeric processing plant. The investment value there is 4.5. This investor is still at a stage where they are collating information to support their application. The jobs will be concluded in due course. NERZA also, this is an investor that wants to engage production of fruit and vegetable using hydroponics, also at a very early stage, but we have done a pre-due diligence, and those jobs will be concluded. The investment value is sitting at 2.5 million. Seshego Creed Chairperson is one of the investors that we're just about to enter into a lease with. We have concluded the due diligence process, and they're into manufacturing of precast concrete slabs for assembling of VIP toilets. This lease agreement, as mentioned, is in progress. They should be operational in the first quarter of the new financial year. Bongo Farms is an investor that intends to establish a poultry abattoir, a meat processing, packaging, and distribution center. A chairperson, this investor also, the application is still going through the pre-due diligence process. Parogate is an investor that is processing of soya beans for the production of raw materials used for feed production and edible soybean oil. The investment value is sitting at 468 million, and they are projecting to create 130 jobs. Dalonet is one of the hottest lists, again, a chairperson. This investor is funding her own capital as well as OPEX funding. We have already given her the letter of support from the SEZ to Standard Bank in terms of supporting her application. They will be manufacturing a variety of knitting fabrics for domestic use and exports, and the investment value is sitting at 370 million. and their projected jobs are at 312. Indeed, Chairperson, this is a viable and feasible pipeline despite our challenges. As mentioned, that it has been proven that we still remain a preferred investment location for these investors. Going to slide number 15. And this is a slide just that indicates the top structures funding and all the upcoming leases that we are dealing with, as just to make the committee aware that the conclusion of leases for the SEZ is quite tedious in the sense that there are prerequisites in terms of the investors going to look for capital funding, as well as in other instances, especially the OPEX funding. In the absence of a capital budget, as the SEZ, we are reliant on the GTIC for top structure funding. And it is within this context that the Point of Foods is preparing an application to be submitted to the GBSA and GTIC by MEP SEZ for top structure funding. And this funding, again, Chairperson, from the GTIC is on first come, first basis. And this is the only reliance of capital budget that we have. This investors' operational budget is self-funded, and they wish to establish a facility for the manufacturing of packing and distribution of dry powder foods. This is one of the viable investor, Chairperson, already operational in other provinces, and with a feasible capital value in terms of his operations. The MEP SEZ is also concluding a lease with Seshego Crete, is a local investor with an investment value of 333 million. And we have mentioned earlier that this investor will be manufacturing a precast concrete slabs for the assembling of the VIP toilets. And they are anticipated to commence their operations from January 2023. And the lease is already in progress. Going to slide number 6, Chairperson, this is just a synopsis of the current investment pipeline that we have, and this pipeline is also audited by the AG. We have 10 local investors as showcased in the previous slides. 2 of those are international, and in total, we've got 12 viable investors, and their pipeline value is sitting at 2.3 billion. The next slide, Chairperson, is just a slide that highlights progress in terms of the investors that we have been talking to. I just ran through the progress quickly. Point of Foods, we have concluded due diligence for the investor. That has been concluded. And we're just waiting for the architectural factory drawings from the investor to submit top structure to the GBSA and GTIC, a technical team, in terms of assisting us in the absence of a technical team. They'll be looking at putting together a POQ in that regard. In Tabazwe Mineral, they will be establishing storage of handling of manganese. Investors is currently undertaking their feasibility study, Chair. This is one area that we require an EIA specialist. However, we have outsourced an EIA specialist so that they can also interrogate this application, and we are looking at that in terms of the completion of the licensing and environmental compliance requirements. Siratani Beverage is a investor that will be establishing a beverage production and distribution facility. In terms of progress, the due diligence process is completed, and investor is waiting for approval of OPEX funding from the ITC. And Chairperson, just to make mention that as the SEZ, we also support our investors in identifying various funding houses, i.e. your ITC Industrial, Black Industrialist Fund, the NEF, ITC, all those funding houses, as as one of the requirements is that they need to provide us with their own operational budget. They need to provide us with a proof. The process of sourcing operational budget share takes a long time, and in most cases attributes to delaying the application process in realizing the investment by signing a lease with the investor. And I think that's where the delays are. In terms of NTTA, which is an establishment of a red abattoir, the due diligence process is completed, Chair. Investors are awaiting approval of OPEX funding from the ITC. SEZ has already provided a letter of support to investors, to this investor to tap into various funding houses in terms of their OPEX funding. Going to the next slide, still a continuation of the pipeline. We've got Superfoods, which are into production of maize snacks. Due diligence process also yet has been completed, and also this due diligence is quite a tedious and cumbersome process. Investor is awaiting approval from OPEX funding from CIFA, and MEP SEZ has submitted a letter of support to CIFA to support the investor for OPEX application. So when these investors indicate that they have engaged the SEZ, the funders have confidence in fast-tracking their applications. Most firms, investors currently sourcing funding also again OPEX funding with a local funding house. This is a demonstration, Chair, that most of the applications are being held up OPEX funding. And NERSA is also seeing an OPEX funding from a local funding house. Seshego Creek, as mentioned, will be operating in Q3 of the current financial year. And in terms of the Bongo farms, the investor is currently sourcing funding from local funding houses, including loans from local banking institutions. Going to Parugate, investor has submitted the proof of operational and capital budget to us as a prerequisite, and we also have provided the letter of support. They emanate from United Arab Emirates, but there are also governance issues within their structures that they are sorting out. Dalonet is definitely one promising investor that will soon be realizing. The due diligence process, as mentioned, is complete. Investors are awaiting CAPEX funding from Standard Bank. We have completed the required documents in support of the investor to the Standard Bank. And just in closure, in terms of this pipeline, Chairperson, in the absence of capital budget, we are reliant on the TTIC establishment grant. We have also employed a model of investors to self-fund their top structures, where they will be charged rentals only for land and not for their structures as they enter into a notarial lease with us. This is beneficial to the state, Chair, as such buildings will remain the state asset after the lease expires. And at the same time, this fast tracks the infrastructure development within the special economic zone. Going to the next slide, which talks to job created and sustained. I must mention that, Chairperson, the SEZ collects and monitors HR recruitment reports from investors on a monthly basis, and we monitor job losses through retrenchments and etc. If we look at the jobs that we have created and the jobs which are currently on the ground, we've got Kevali Chemicals. Since inception 2017-2018, they had created 46 job opportunities, and currently due to retrenchments affected by COVID and other issues, they're sitting at 20. Number one, hair industry, they've created 54. They're sitting at 50 currently in terms of jobs which they've created. In Tabazwe Agri, they in 2017, since 2017-18, they had created 37. Now they're sitting at 9. Steenberg-Park it has created 91, they're sitting at 81. And since inception, we have created 228. I think this is in line with our annual report, but currently we are sitting with 160 jobs created on the ground. And most jobs, Chair, I must say that were lost during the COVID period. In terms of feeder sectors for employment, we've got Kevali, which is into chemical blending as a sector. Number one here is a synthetic hair manufacturing sector. Interbazo is agro-processing. Most of the jobs, Chair, which are created emanates from agro-processing sector, which is our lead sector because of agricultural activities which are prevalent in the Eastern Free State where the SEZ is located. So we continue to leverage on these agricultural activities which are around the SEZ. In terms of the investors from the FDC that has to be migrated to the SEZ, those are jobs in terms of their sectors. In total, we've got jobs which were created under textiles and manufacturer. We can see there, those are the jobs that are listed, even under agro-processing and logistics and warehousing. A chairperson also, just to indicate that we have started as part of the migration process to collect data from these investors, and the total jobs created at this point in time is 1,130. However, I should mention that at this point in time, we are preparing for the migration. We are not yet audited under for these jobs, but we are audited for the SEZ jobs. But going forward, once the migration of assets have happened, we'll then incorporate these jobs into the SEZ. But it's safe to say that the FDC currently is reporting on the jobs created under these investors. And lastly, under the FDC general processing, those are the jobs created, Crownback 90, Boston 35. We have just listed all the jobs per sectors, and I won't run through in the essence of time. And those are the jobs that are created under the FDC. Chairperson, going to slide 24, the management model as requested of the MF SEZ. We've got inputs, which is your investment capital that talks to CAPEX or OPEX. We've got funding that is advertising, revenue, grants from the banks or bank loans, tenant, rentals as revenue, and all the funding houses that I've mentioned, which is your Black Industrialist Fund, which is your NEF, your ITC, and many more other funders. So, and we do make privy to the investors at these relevant funding houses. We do assist them as the SEZ. Demarcated land and infrastructure, as we all know that infrastructure is key to economic development. We also have tax incentives and concessions that we'll be talking to later on, people resources and professional teams. As we are successful, SEZ also have professional teams on the ground that is key as our input, utilities and investment. And lastly, Chair, under inputs, we've got our stakeholders. Our main stakeholder, I must say, being nationally being the GTIC and the ITC. And in the province, we are supported by TSTIA, headed by the Honorable MEC, FDC, as well as the provincial government. In terms of activities, we promote and attract local and foreign investment, promote industrialization and beneficiation in ensuring that we ignite the economy of the Free State and Maluti-A-Phofung. Promote investment that acts as a facilitator to investors. And we walk the talk with the investors in the absence of a one-stop shop and also in the absence of a capacity. We try to assist our clients and also taking even to SARS for the SARS workshops in terms of them understanding the tax incentives that are being gazetted and offered. We plan and implement SEZ park activities, facilitate job creation and skills development, which is the main objective of the SEZ, in ensuring that the locals are employed, and we combat poverty and social ills within the region. Manage a property, that is your billing, collecting of rentals, engaging and managing the stakeholders, investors, communities, the province, TTICN, etc. We also tasked with marketing the SEZ and positioning the brand of the SEZ in an effort to be able to attract foreign direct investment. Design financial plan and coordinate resources, and we promote knowledge sharing and digitization. In terms of customers and beneficiaries, Chair, we have potential local and international investors. We're not only concentrating on the locals, but also internationally, citizens in the districts, businesses within the region, especially also ensuring that those emerging businesses are also, they also benefit through a value-added products with the established businesses that we are attracting. SME support is key to the SEZ in the sense that we encourage the existing investors through the value chain of investment to be, so that the value chain benefits the small businesses. We are also have a plan to renovate the existing factories, especially the small ones, so that they can host readily the small businesses which are keen to come and operate within the zone. And we have also embarked on engaging the business chambers as well as the SMMEs in the region by hosting workshops. We have hosted one recently where we actually shared just the opportunities that they can leverage on within the zone. In terms of outputs, we need to have a functioning infrastructure within the zone. That is the main core business of the special economic zone. Infrastructure development is key. Operational, profitable manufacturing investment opportunities, that's what we create, and that is our output. We want to see people employed, new jobs being created, development of skills in the region, migration of skills from international investors to the locals is key to the SEZ, and also the custom control area that will enable the SEZ to attract more investors. In terms of the district development model, we form part of the district model, and we are active participants in this model. Under the district development model, all three spheres of government coordinate and integrate development plans and budgets and mobilize the capacity and resources of government and civil society, including business, labor, and community, in pursuit of inclusive growth and job creation. And in essence, this is just to coordinate planning and execution of projects in support of the SEZ. Remember that the local sphere of government is also tasked to support the SEZ in terms of its development. Therefore, in the context of the SEZ, and for it to respond to the government's development agenda, the DDM dictates that the SEZ and all the necessary spheres of government, including parastatals plan and budget together, are done in a coordinated manner to achieve economic development and job creation, and not plan in silos. To this end, Chair, the SEZ has submitted its catalytic projects to the DDM of Thabo Mofokeng district for integration into their DDM plan. We have also submitted this project to ISA, which is the Infrastructure South Africa, that is within the ambit of the presidency. So there is indeed a collaboration in that regard. Going to the next slide, coordination between three spheres of government. There is a integral coordination within national, provincial, and local spheres of government in support of the SEZ. And the national, there is an ongoing collaboration with the DTIC as the key stakeholder for policy direction, monitoring, and funding. Institutions such as the IDC and DBSA also plays a role on technical support for infrastructure projects, and IDC for funding of our investors. And I must say that we do get support, Chair, from the IDC and we are one of their active key stakeholders. There is also an SEZ forum that is sitting also today to enable collective ideas on SEZ strategies and development. And also to mention that, Chair, we also leverage on benchmarking with the SSS that are already at an advanced stage. So we do have that collaboration. And the provincial government, the province has categorized the MAP SSZ as one of their catalytic projects for economic development. Therefore, the progress and challenges are discussed at provincial ESCO budget Lekgotla, and this is also spearheaded by the executive authority, which is our MEC. There is an ongoing collaboration between DISTIA with the leadership of the MEC on initiatives of investments, attraction, economic development strategies, and governance. There are leads, Chair, that are directed from the province to the SSZ. We also collaborate closely with the provincial treasury, in particular regarding funding matters and support for ensuring that the SSZ is sustainable. Under the local municipality, we are actively participating at the DDM Model Committee and to ensure that our infrastructure projects receive attention, and also to ensure that there is a coordinated service delivery, in particular job creation and support to the investors. The MAP SSZ works closely with the municipality on issues of electricity and water, which is a challenge, we must say, in our region, integrated plans for infrastructure projects and support to the investors. Going to challenges, Chair, the main one is intermittent power and electricity supply. In the main, this results to revenue and job losses for the investors. The power cuts negatively affect tenants' production, Chair. They cause damage to tenants' equipment. They lead to revenue losses during downtimes, and in some instances, they lead to job losses. They cause potential litigations from investors as they lose their revenue. And vandalism of electrical infrastructure has also impacted largely on our electricity supply. In terms of solutions, we are looking at the upgrade of existing substations to ensure consistent electricity supply, and these substations were vandalized, Chair. The MAP SSZ is also exploring a 10 megawatt solar plant within the zone in an effort to mitigate electricity challenges through a triple P, which has been introduced to the SSZ by the TTIC. This alternative power supply initiative is spearheaded, as I've mentioned, by the TTIC, ITC, and DBSA. And we have gone, we are at an advanced stage, Chair, in ensuring that this project, if it goes well, it gets implemented to ensure that the MAP SSZ investors get consistent power supply to the zone. And in the interim, Chair, just to mention that the SSZ has borrowed the municipality a 40 MVA transformer when the municipality transformer was hit by lightning in 2021. This is evident, Chair, to collaborated efforts between the municipality and the SSZ, ensuring that the businesses and the community of Thaba Mofokeng are not negatively affected by these outages. Going to the water supply interruptions, we've got constant water interruptions, which have adverse effects on our tenants' production lines and their profits. This results in tenants threatening to relocate to other SSZs, which in turn will impact negatively on job creation within the region. In terms of solutions, there is a reservoir, there are 2 reservoirs in Tiami, and initially we had renovated the one reservoir so that it can supply the SSZ. We just need to, so that the reservoir has to feed the water directly to the SSZ. We just need to source funding just to complete those renovations. It's one of the strategies that we have employed. In our deliberations with the MAP Water, they've also proposed a connection of the municipal water pump station directly to the SSZ water infrastructure. So there is also deliberations that are ongoing between the SSZ and MAP Water. MAP Water is also exploring a direct water pipe installation that will supply water from the Sterkfontein Dam directly to feed into the MAP SSZ. Capital funding, Chair, is required for this infrastructure development within the zone. This is the most critical as agent solution, as we currently do not have funding for any capital projects. So the funding is indeed a challenge. Going to a dysfunctional municipality water treatment plant, as much as this is an asset of the municipality, but it impacts negatively on the SEZ. It impacts on the waste disposal system of the MAP SEZ investors. This poses a risk of contaminating the town's water supply for the greater Harrismith area. It also impacts the environmental and health and safety regulations relating to water treatment plants, adversely affects the approval of plans due to the impact it has to the EIA, such as abattoirs that are being abattoirs who would be obliged to stop operating till the municipal waste treatment plant is functional. This also affects the disposal of effluents from our investors, especially in the agro-processing sector. And in terms of solutions, we have spoken and engaged the municipality to refurbish the wastewater treatment plant, and municipality should also implement security measures in terms of protecting this asset from possible vandalism, as vandalism is rife in this area. In terms of going forward with our challenges, the main one, Chair, which is a lack of capital budget. Since 2017, our baseline has never increased. We've been allocated 20 million, initially was allocated for recruitment. As you know that we were given a 3-year to capacitate the STZ, also to put processes in place. And this 20 million was meant for that. However, a huge part of this is applied to security services and maintenance and repairs. We have never received any capital budget from the province, Chair. We are reliant on the establishment fund from the GTIC. There are currently also 18 factories which are vacant that we require to refurbish and make them ready for investor occupation. This is another strategy, not to wait for new structures, which takes long in terms of designing of plans and other processes which are involved. MAP SEZ does not have a capital budget to fund these refurbishments. For the same reason, we depend on the GTIC funding. This is just a synopsis that since 2017, 18 million, our allocation on OPEX was 4 million, 2018-19, it stayed at 20, 2019-20, we allocated 20 million again. 2021, we were allocated 20, but because of COVID, that budget was reduced to 17 million. 2021-22, we got an allocation of 20 million, 22-23, 20 million, and 23-24 will also receive a 20 million OPEX budget, and we will only get additional budget of 20 million in 2024-25. According to the new approved MOI, Chair, the transfer of control of assets is anticipated to be finalized during 2022-23 financial year to enable the MAP SSA to operate independently and to generate its own revenue. There are critical processes and activities that will inevitably require funding, such as ITC system in terms of billing and managing these properties, building environment expertise, operational staff, business analysts, technical staff, that is your quantity surveyors, electrical and civil engineers, architects, property and facilities management, and some of these processes will be phased out, whilst in the interim we will remain on shared services with FDC with clear and proper plan and time frames. Going forward, Chair, the other major challenge that we have, if you look at the investment pipeline that we have, that we need various skills to be able to manage this. pipeline, your business analysts, your investment promotion managers, and so on. So in accordance with our structure, there was an interim structure that was approved by the board in 2017 that consisted of 53 posts. 7 of those posts were prioritized to be filled in 2018, Chair, but were not filled due to budgetary constraints. From 2017 to 2019, we only functioned with 6 employees, Chair, and all this pipeline has been handled by the staff members. And the 6th, Chair, the strategy we also applied was that we engaged the interns, we brought them in, and it's only last year that these interns became permanent. At present, we have 13 employees, Chair, 2 are only executives, myself and the CFO, and we only have 1 manager. And in terms of solution, we definitely need an increase of operational budget for 2023-24 financial year to fund the MAP-SZ operations and capacity requirements. While we are cognizant, Chair, that the SEZ will realize an increase of its budget OPEX baseline from 20 million to 40 million in 2024. The SEZ requires an operational budget of 12 million in the next financial year to be able to meet its obligations to accommodate the transfer of the control of assets from the FTC to the SEZ. An effort to establish a public listed entity, Chair, as mentioned earlier by the MEC, spearheaded by him, was undertaken with national and provincial treasury, but in vain, Chair, that didn't apply. However, as we stand, we are a subsidiary of the FTC. How funds are being transferred, this grant gets transferred to Distia, and from Distia it goes to the FTC, and the FTC then releases the funds to the SEZ purely because we are not a listed public entity. In terms of future plans and initiatives, the SEZ has commenced on the process of applying for a custom controlled area permit, and the appointment of the board will definitely assist as they play a vital role in terms of documentation in applying for the CCA license. This permit will enable the zone to accommodate bonded goods and also attract logistics and warehousing companies to invest within the zone. Businesses and operators located within a custom control area of the special economic zone are eligible for VAT and tax relief, Chair, and this will enable the SSA to attract more investors. In terms of presidential projects, through the District Development Project Committee, the SEZ has begun to engage the committee to seize the opportunity of attracting anchor tenants from the presidential projects. We have realized that anchor investments and projects accelerates development of special economic zones, i.e. Yotwani Automotive, and over the weekend there was also an aqua facility that will be established within Guha. And those anchor projects, we saw that leveraging on these presidential projects will definitely also fast track and accelerate the development of our special economic zone. Refurbishment of existing factories, we have spoken to this, that we have 18 factories that we want to renovate. The aim is to enable the SEZ to have them ready for the SMMEs as well as for the investors, those that can readily occupy them, whilst others can go the route of the funding application for toll structures through the GGIC. Support to SMMEs, refurbishments of these factories will be converted and partitioned them in smaller sizes in order to accommodate SMEs. And this is also a strategy that we had adopted from Guha, where you'll have a so-called an SMME hub within the special economic zone. Participants of the SMMEs in the value chain of the new MAP SEZ investors through the value-added benefits, i.e. byproducts for further beneficiation and services. We are confident that this process will definitely also encourage the SMMEs to form part of the value chain of the SEZ. The multi-purpose center, this is one center that we are planning to establish within the zone, and once once funding is made available, the center will house, amongst others, a conference center, training facilities, one-stop shop, etc. These amenities, including the selling of advertising space along the N5 highway, will also assist in generating additional revenue, as the funding model of the SEZ is that in a long run, they need to sustain themselves. So this is also one of the revenue strategies that we have. Lastly, in terms of the smart city, this is a creation of a smart city in collaboration with the municipality and other relevant departments. The municipality is spearheading this process, and they are at a planning phase. The smart city concept will house amenities, that is your schools, your hospitals, your clinics, your recreation centers, housing, etc., around the zone in collaboration with relevant departments. We have witnessed this concept internationally, and the SEZ future plan speaks to this model of a smart city. And lastly, Chair, in terms of the concessions that we are offering, we are one of the special economic zones that were gazetted for the tax incentives. As you're aware, that is not all the SEZs which were gazetted. We do have those tax incentives gazetted in the main, your corporate tax as well as your VAT incentive. Offering of below market related rentals to tenants, Chair, is what we do, also being mindful also to be able to generate revenue. Holiday rentals, we also offer that. Low escalation rates, normally they see the 10% and we offer around 7%. And the conferencing facilities, once we have in terms of our master plan, once this conferencing facility is established, we will then generate revenue at discounted rates. And Chairperson, I thank you. That is the end of my presentation.
Thank you very much. We will go straight over and get the presentation from the industrial parks. I think the MEC said that the CEOs are on the platform.
Good morning, Chair. Yes, indeed, I am on the platform. If I could just be allowed the rights to share, Chair. My name is Botshabelo.
Yes.
Okay, super.
Let me just see.
There, Mr. Lebelo has the rights to share.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, super, thank you. Chair, can I just confirm that is it visible on the screen?
No, we just see all your files.
Because I started sharing. It says I'm already sharing.
We don't see it yet.
Okay. Let me try again.
Nora?
Yeah, we see it. Can you just go to slide mode? Thank you.
Is it now visible?
Yes, it is. Please
Okay.
proceed. Thank you.
Right. Thank you. Honorable Chair, for your committee and trade industry and competition, honorable members, my MEC in Tatemakalo, HOD Distia, colleagues from DTIC, my colleagues from the FDC and MEP-SEZ, my sincere greetings to you all. Chair, just by way of opening remarks before I start my presentation, just to state that our mandate as the FDC is broader than just the industrial parks. We are the economic engine, development engine of the Free State, and our main focus is around SMME development. The two parks that I'm going to focus on today are old and established from the 1980s. The first one is the Botshabelo one that we inherited from the former BNDC, which is the Phuthaditjhaba National Development Corporation, and the one in Phuthaditjhaba we inherited from the former homeland of Guapa. Chair, The Phuthaditjhaba one has specific problems in that it's the largest of the two, and it's been suffering from intermittent electricity and water supply in the last few years. There's currently intervention to have Eskom supply electricity directly to the tenants of industrial parks and also to the residents. And this is planned to be effective the 1st of December this year. That's in a week's time. And with bated breath watching that development to make sure that it happens. The water problems, Bloom Water has had a mandate from Department of Water and Sanitation for them to sort out the water issues in Maluti-A-Phofung. So we hopefully, if these two issues are sorted, that we, to a large extent, will be able to see that park being optimized and operating as it should. Chair, if I can go straight into the presentation. The DBSA was appointed by DTIC sometime in 2015 to provide agency services for physical infrastructure development projects for these revitalization programs of industrial parks. DBSA then appointed a company called Bakhala Consulting for phase 1 of the project, which is the condition assessment. In Free State is for these two parks in Phuthaditjhaba and Botshabelo. And in July 2016, Bakhala summarized its findings of the condition assessment of the Botshabelo Park and the one in Phuthaditjhaba as follows. The first bucket of problems relate to environment. The level of environmental pollution and degradation because of activities in the park is such that it is now a danger to health and safety of people. It's even worse outside the industry of the park. The air pollution, noxious substances, chemical disposal through sewer and stormwater systems, pollution of rivers and watercourses. There are no environmental safeguards in the park. Activities in the park blatantly disregard environmental practices and legislation. And in 2014, DWAF had issued a directive to the park in Botshabelo, resulting from pollution to the environment caused by activities in the park. And these activities blatantly disregarded environmental practices and legislation. There's a general lack of policies and poor enforcement. This has been allowed for many industries to bypass laws made by pollution control boards and municipal bylaws, which resulted in mass-scale pollution that affected the lives of many people. And the tenant mix in our parks is also not a good one, in the sense that you have businesses that are unrelated put next to each other. There's also noise pollution and discharge of contaminated water and waste, which is quite prevalent in both parks. Spillage of oil and diesel from storage tanks in some industries was found. Also no procedures in place to deal with the spillages. There was also evidence of smoke being released within the industry. Nitrogen dioxide, sulfur dioxide, carbon dioxide, which are all released during paper manufacturing. Nitrogen dioxide and sulfur dioxide are major contributors to acid rain, whereas CO2 is responsible for greenhouse gases, which are impacting on climate change. The current waste management that is being used is not effective, as most tenants are storing waste behind their backyard. There's also soil contamination, which was found in most tenants' buildings due to inappropriate storage and refueling areas such as for oil, diesel, petrol, and other chemicals within the park. There's also a leakage in Botshabelo. There was a leakage that was found behind an industrial area from an overflowing manhole that was causing. It was as a result of pump station that was not working, and that was causing massive pollution as the drainage of this water was moving along the street, disposed into the nearby stream and causing wetland and surrounding near the Orange Street. The second bucket of problem, Chair, relates to the building and infrastructure that are non-compliant with even the basic health and safety and fire regulation standards. The level of building infrastructure degradation caused by age, neglect, and lack of maintenance is causing installations and infrastructure to be non-compliant with health and safety standards and regulations The cement main water reticulation pipes, badly damaged medium voltage electrical installation, operated air in occupational areas. The DP boards in the building do not meet the IEC and SANS requirements and protected from the hazard. The circuit overflow capabilities are also not met. In some cases, inferior circuit breakers are used, which are not SABS approved. All DBs, light switches, and plugs are not labeled as per SANS requirements, which state that all equipment and circuits shall be labeled. Power meters, voltage and circuit meters on the boards are also not functional, which poses a high risk of overloading the transformers as well as the low voltage feeder cables as a result of failure of all main breakers. Building interior lighting, area lighting and wiring. Most of the lighting is not functional and the type of lighting fixtures installed are not efficient, with lux level not meeting the requirement level based on the building functionality as specified by the regulations. Fire detection systems, Chair, none to speak of. This is not consistent with the national building regulations for industrial buildings. Intrusion detection, no system to detect intrusions. The heating and cooling is inadequate in the buildings that were inspected by Bahale. Some buildings had split air tapping conditions, which are haphazardly installed and in many cases not suitable for the spaces in which they were installed. And where some of them exist, they are only installed in office areas, not where the majority of people are working. There is no environmental heating or cooling system in the factory area. Ventilators in many factories are mounted on the roof and are mostly dysfunctional, and many of those are also operated manually. Ventilation in the building is non-compliant with SANS and environmental health regulations. And the serious one is a fire protection, Chair. Fire prevention and fighting equipment extremely minimal. All the properties are equipped with 30-meter real hoses and 9 kilograms of dry chemical powder bottles strategically located within the building itself. The challenge with that type of fire protection, Chair, is that at night and there's no one there, there's a problem. And the fire is likely to consume the building. Another challenge is that the buildings are double volume in height, and should the fire break out at the top, extinguisher will virtually be impossible to use using the real hose. The fire systems are non-compliant with SANS, which dictates that all buildings must be fire safe, especially the ones with wide area range and high ceiling volumes exceeding 3 meters. The third bucket of problems is around the real estate management. We have poor letting. What was observed at the time is that there were poor letting practices. Bad tenants means, as I said, we don't recover our rentals. It is poor property management, poor maintenance practices, poor facilities management, and lack of support in terms of accounting systems. There was also questionable financial sustainability of these properties. Security, at the time that Bahal was there, the perimeter fences were being constructed around the parks to improve security, but there was no access control. The state of facilities has deteriorated because of lack of maintenance. The tenant mix I already spoke about. It's inconsistent and disorganized. And there was also no sign of planning in terms of defined business zones and or clustering of tenants. There wasn't any visible signs for marketing of vacant properties. The rates that are charged are also inconsistent and largely not even market related. Well, that's because we are really the market where we are. There's also extensive real estate concessions which are inconsistent with cost recovery, particularly for utilities such as water, electricity, and sewer, which has resulted in large amounts being owed to municipalities. The fourth bucket, Chair, is around the structural and infrastructure deficiencies of the properties. The level of structural deterioration of the buildings and infrastructure poses a potential occupational health danger. Failing structural components in buildings due to lack of maintenance and exposure to elements, dysfunctional domestic and fire water supply, inadequate sewer management systems, etc. Functional and aesthetic deficiencies, just the look and feel of the buildings. The level of building degradation is making the building sick and making the building unattractive to potential tenants, leading to inefficient leasing. So those are the summaries of the findings of Bahale. And Bahale went further, Chair, and said, well, to mitigate or fix all these problems, what is the budget that required to be able to do all of this? And for Botshabelo, it was estimated at about 1.2 billion. That was in 2016, and Phuthaditjhaba 1.6 billion. So total requirement to take these factories, industrial parks, back to their former glory would be around 2.7, 2.9 billion. Now, Chair, I turn to how the DTIC has been kind enough to us to try and assist. There's a couple of phases in both Botshabelo and Phuthaditjhaba that has been undertaken thus far. Phase one in Botshabelo was around 25 million, and the scope of work was to do security fencing, gates and high mast lighting, and some electrical infrastructure upgrades, a replacement of factory shutter doors. And the impact of that has been there's been some improvement in the image of the park, and we've seen the crime rate decrease in terms of vandalism of the factories. And during construction, there were 33 individuals who were employed from locally. And there was also some level of comfort from the tenants that were there who were planning to leave. They were retained. There's also improved security, including lighting and access to the park. And we have attracted new business. Since then, we created 410 jobs, and the tenants have invested to a tune of 610 million in total. And that project, Chair, lasted a year from January 2016 to completed in January 2017. The next phase, Chair, was phase two, which was 40.5 million. This was to treat the roof and paint work, to install some wind masters, replacement of polycarbonate sheets, a new roof installation at 35E factory on Orange Street, rehabilitation of electrical works and civil works in one of the factories, sewer network rehabilitation, installation of CCTV security surveillance system, additional work at number 9 Pink Street, which is a state-of-the-art digital hub, the facade entrance upgrade, additional 9 roof repairs in 9 factories. So the impact of that, Chair, has been that the entrance now, when you go there, you look like you're entering something where there's business happening. So it's looking quite good. And in this project, phase 2, Chair, there was 102 people that were employed. And we've also, the impact has been further tenant retention, and security has drastically improved now that people know that there's CCTV in the park and access is controlled. That project, Chair, started on the 16th of September 2019. It was completed in March this year. And in Phuthaditjhaba, phase 1 was 32.2, and that started in January 2017, and it was completed a year later in January 2018. And the scope of work there, Chair, was to install fencing, installation of CCTV cameras, guard houses for security personnel, gates at main entrance and pedestrian gates, boom gates, high mast lighting upgrade and maintenance and replacement of roller shutter doors at some of the factories. The impact has been that there's been some security in the park. We saw crime rate decrease. We retained some of the tenants, and we established 40 new tenants that came into the park. That includes SA Cloth, that invested 15 million rand and created 900 jobs. Transmec Quarry invested 50 million and it created 70 jobs. A company called Honeyline Trading that invested 5 million and created 80 jobs. I must just caution here, Chair, that due to our unavailability of funding, the installed CCTV camera system is currently non-functional, and it just needs a little bit of money to be sorted out. We're busy with trying to source funding from the provincial government to make sure that happens, because we're seeing crime beginning to spike again as a result of people now know that the CCTV does not work. The phase 2 application for Phuthaditjhaba is currently being considered by the DTIC and the Tabanchu. There's a third industrial park that we have, Chair, and that is Tabanchu. It's a smaller one. A phase 1 application was declined. I think there were some outstanding information, but DTIC has been kind enough to allow us to make amendments to the application and resubmit, and we have done so. So, so far, there's just under 100 million rand as invested. Compared to the 2.9 billion rand required, we've got some way to fully address the deficiencies identified by the Bakare study. But we have seen that a little bit of investment makes a very big difference in the lives of the people in Phuthaditjhaba and in the Mangaung Metro. The kind of tenants that we have there, there's many, and I didn't want to mention the names, but I just said they are clustered in broadly about 5 groups. There's a lot of textile manufacturers, people manufacture electrical components. There's also people who are producing plastic products. In Thaba Nchu, there's a big poultry producer that supplies almost whole of the Free State with chicken products. There's also food and snack sectors that are there in both these parks. They play a critical role in contributing to the employment in Mangaung and Maluti-A-Phofung. Currently, in Mangaung, Botshabelo employs approximately 6,200 people, and it will be more. And Phuthaditjhaba employs 8,000 people. It can go up to 20,000 people that it used to be in the 80s and the 90s. And Thaba Nchu currently employs 276, but this Thaba Nchu will go up to over 3,000. And I'll explain why Thaba Nchu is becoming such a focus area in the next few slides, Chair. Thank you. There's a small pipeline for Phuthaditjhaba. There's a company called Pelo Motau who are looking for 364 square meters to do a service station. Their direct investment into our factory is about 550,000. That's to fix the factory, but that excludes their investment in equipment and other things to run the service center. And they will employ approximately 50 people. Glory Superstore, they need about 104 square meters. They'll invest some 190,000 in electrical upgrades. They'll employ about 2 people. Shepherd Charles Engineering, 325,000, and additional 2 people. Dupes Metal, it's mechanical, 70,000. They employ 3 people. Fair Discounters, upgrade of 10 million to the factory. They'll employ 15 people. PUD, manufacturing, they'll spend about 1.5 million. They'll employ 50 people. Zulu Trading, which is a tire service center, 3 million rand into a factory, which is currently a vacant land, and they will employ 40 people. Rahila Funeral, it's quite a unique name to want to operate an abattoir, and your name is Rahila Funeral, but that's what it is. Investment value is 5.5 million, and potential job opportunities are 30. Textile House, they're looking for quite a large factory, just under 5,000 square meters. They will put machines and upgrade the factory to the tune of 50 million. They'll employ 150 people. And Casrix, also textile, 15 million rand, and they will employ approximately 60 people. So this investments of approximately 86 million is not all investment to run the business, but it's just what is directly related to the upgrades of the factories. And in Botshabelo, which is largely occupied, except for a few factories that are not fit for habitation, there's a company called SKT Starmark, 2,100 square meters. It's manufacturing, investment rate of 7.5 million. They will employ approximately 150 people. Morgan Spillay Surgical Manufacturers, 1,200 square meter factory. They'll invest 5 million and employ 100 people. I Chem Clean, 1,141 square meters. They'll also invest 5 million to employ approximately 30 people. That's 280 people in total in Phuthaditjhaba. Sorry, I think this is in Botshabelo. Here I said that Thaba Nchu seems to be a focal hub at the moment. There's one big anchor project in that park called Under Trading, which is tracked at Presidential Infrastructure Program, but the investment is completely by a private sector, where there's a steel manufacturing, it's a steel mill that's going to be producing steel products that is coming up there. And at peak, it will employ 2,000 people. And we've seen a lot of interest from many other companies that want to go there because they're attracted by this big steel mill that's coming up there. It's 90% complete in terms of construction. Also a company called Mainland Trading. It's looking for 2,000 square meters of manufacturing, then invest 4.2 million and employ 30 people. They do PVC piping and similar products for the building industry. Chabas Motors, which is motor repairs, we are availing a factory for them to upgrade, but they will do motor repairs in that factory primarily for government work in that node. So there's about 304 million rand that we invested there, and approximately 2,055 jobs that are about to be created. But further to that, beyond the park, we've seen that there's a lot of interest in Tabanchu in that the Super Spa is going to open in Ratlo. It's one of the old buildings that we have, because now the purchasing power will improve, more people being employed in Botshabelo, particularly from the steel mill. So we're seeing quite a fragile activity in Tabanchu at the moment. Chair, just by quickly, the identified opportunities that we've seen, there's due to the problems of electricity in Maluti-A-Phofung, there is a project with the intervention of DTIC for the solar photovoltaic installations. This is exploring alternative power supply for the park. And I think much as we have Eskom going to take over, we look at other alternatives, because load shedding is likely to be with us for a long time. And there's another opportunity of a fabric unpicking plant in Phuthaditjhaba, where the waste fabric is currently being exported to China and India, where unpicking happens and the yarn is produced and is imported back into South Africa at 30 rand a ton. It's exported 154 per kilogram and is imported back at 30 rand per kilogram, sorry, not a ton. But if there's unpicking plant in Phuthaditjhaba, there's opportunity to sell the yarn at 12.50. So that could massively assist the textile companies in Phuthaditjhaba Industrial Park. There's also an opportunity to rehabilitate 3 beehives with incubation center in the park. Currently, the assessment is being done with the help of the DTIC, with the funding that comes from the critical infrastructure program. The type of incentives that we give, Chair, we have normal rental holidays depending on the amount of investment in our factories that a tenant puts up. But normally, general small 3 to 5 year leases, we have discounts of up to 10% on normal rates, and we offer additional 2% discount for women-owned businesses, additional 2% for youth-owned businesses, 2% for businesses owned by disabled people. And community-based projects they are looked at as small industries, and we are affording 50% rental rates reduction for first year of for half of the first year, provided they take a lease of at least 3 years. How are these parks managed? They are all owned by the FDC, managed by a team of professionals from the FDC. We are wholly owned by Listea. And as I said, they are part of our mandate, which is broader than just these parks of SMME development in the province. And through the DBSA, the DTIC has been quite kind to us in assisting with the upgrades of these factories. And the provincial government has been assisting a lot with the cleaning and upkeep of the parks through the expanded public works program. We haven't had a lot of traction with the local government because Mangaung and Botshabelo has had their own issues that they're dealing with. But we keep an eye and we have a cordial relationship in terms of dealing with them. But where we require their assistance to assist our clients, we always take them to make sure the process are fast-tracked such that the tenants can be installed in the parks as soon as possible. The challenges that we have here are really mainly funding related. Funding to upgrade the factories to make them available, funding to upgrade the infrastructure, the roads, the water reticulation and the like in the parks. And I think once we solve that, there's more than enough interest in people wanting to go and come into the park. And as far afield as Qatar and other countries, China and India, that want to come and invest in our properties. We just have to make the properties available for them. What we try and do as much as possible, as I demonstrated here, is we try and structure relationships where we say, if a tenant has money, but we can't fix a property for them, we structure a relationship where we say, we put up your money, we give you a loan lease for you to recover your funding, and we let them go in, and they create jobs for our people. And that is the end of my presentation, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much, CEO. Members, those are the presentations. We're well within our time. Can I take hands for discussion, please? For both presentations, the industrial parks and the SEZs. Members? Okay, I think let us break for, I see Honorable Mbiyani's, yeah, let me take the questions, then we'll break and for 10 minutes, and then we'll come back and look at responses. Honorable Mbiyani.
Thank you very much, Chairperson, for the opportunity. I hope I'm audible enough. I have network challenges now.
Yeah, but we can hear you.
Yes, Chair. Let me first welcome both presentations. They bring us some thoughts in terms of understanding how is it operated, the SEZ and also for the industrial parks. Hence, Chair, I just wanted to check in terms of representative, whether they are able to produce black industrialists, which comprises of women, youth, and person with disabilities. And also propose, Chairperson, that given the length of the presentation, we'll propose that in the near future as the committee, we need to go and make an oversight so that we are able to link what has been presented and what is transpiring on the ground. I think that will be best for us to get an understanding. Chair, and also just a brief, maybe the MEC can be able to give us a clear understanding of the challenges facing them, besides the issue of telecom and the load shedding. Do they have any other alternative in terms of the green energy, which will be able to maintain the status quo in terms of operation? I think those are the questions that I just wanted.
For which entity is that question, your last question, Honorable Mbiyani? Is it for the SEZs or the industrial parks?
It's for both the industrial park and
both.
SEZ.
Okay.
Yes,
Both
because
yes. Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay. No, I'll pause there for now. Thank you very much. Thank you. Sure.
Thank you, Honorable Mbiyani. Honorable Malamacha.
Thank you, Chair. Let me also follow suit and welcome presentations. One is very much happy with the first presentation that is bringing the lost hope of our people when they find us not necessarily doing enough to create jobs. Under difficult circumstances, they've proven that they can also bring that lost hope by creating a lot of jobs and also able to mingle with COVID like others mingled but still emerged. It's one question that will need two comrades, those two presenters to deal with is the issue of investors had to renovate dilapidated infrastructure. Then there is this arrangement of some sort. Then in the second presentation, they wanted to extend it to say they will give the investor 2 months to try and recover the money. Now, comrade, we are running a state here. We can't be behaving as if it's just something outside the
the order of the state where an ordinary person can loan the state money, because that going far to an extent that can lead to capturing of that particular institute. The other one that I'm raising it, trying to say, let the first presenters take note of it, is the issue of how kind they are trying to assist the investors. I just want them to explain how are they tidying it up, that in their assisting of the investors to ensure that they open all doors and assist them through their officials, they guard against corruption in the long run, that we don't want to, when we go as per suggestion of Comrade Mbuyane, on site, we are told that no, officials are enjoying assisting us, but at the very same time, there's a kickback. I'm saying when we do whatever do as a state, it must be in a way that it's not opening holes for whatever activity that at the long run, we will be seen as people who are promoting corruption, because corruption is not something that has got a formula, it's something that can manipulate system. And at the end of the day, we find ourselves wanting. But all in all, Comrade Chair, one is very much happy with the first presentation. The last one is much of the of funds, man. The moment we don't get high numbers being funded, we are not much concerned about the decline. Then we resubmitted, then it went and passed. We want to see the massive funding of the small businesses. We want to be told how you have so massively funded this district of some sort, and now you can tell us that they're doing good and they're upgrading, they're going to another level. Going forward, they're able to sustain themselves so that we can have another batch of other SMEs, so that at the end of the day, we don't be told about just the figures, the 2, 3, 4. I don't think the Comrade Chairperson, we are doing well. We need really to up that game. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Honorable Malamacha. Honorable Mothaung.
Thanks, Chair, for the opportunity. Let me join other members by welcoming both the presentations and also applaud the province. I can see they are trying on job creation, even if they have passed some challenges. I also join or second Honorable Mbuyane to say the presentation is a very good presentation. We are happy. The only thing that is still outstanding is oversight visit to the province. A few issues that I want to check. One, I've heard the MEC spoke about appointing of a board, newly appointed board. I just want to check the structure of that board on gender representation and qualification, because it's important that we know that this board is the board that will assist or will take province somewhere. Chair.
Have you landed, Honorable Mothaung? Okay, we'll go to Honorable 3.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, also just appreciation for the presentations. My question is it's a simple question. We note also the degradation that has taken place and stagnation, decay of the buildings in the SEZs, particularly I think the second presentation of the buildings within the Free State that have crumbled, decayed, fire hazards and so on. Safety hazards to those who actually work in the factories, and safety hazards of those who are working within them. So my simple question is 2 questions. Why was this allowed to happen in the first place? Because we note that in order to get those buildings up to par, billions of rands, over 1 billion rand was required to get the buildings back up to scratch. Now, if the province had just invested on a monthly basis to ensure that you don't have that kind of degradation taking place within the buildings, it could have saved us substantial funds being spent on the upgrades. So the first question is, why was that allowed to happen in the first place? The second question then is, how can we ensure now that the funding that has gone into these structures, we are not going to have a repeat? So what measures are now in place to ensure that your fences are being built, that the tenants feel safe, that you're not going to have outages that are not caused by Eskom, but because of fuses, incorrect SABS safety switches and fuses that have been installed, that all of these things are not going to be taking place. What measures now are in place to prevent this from taking place, from happening a year or two from now? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Honourable Thring. I don't see any further hands. I think my question is just briefly the capacity in the industrial parks. How many more tenants does each of the industrial parks need to be operating at full capacity? And is there a plan? What is the plan to attract investment into the industrial parks? Those are the questions from the members. I am going to grant us just a short body break, and then we'll come back at about 5 to 11 for responses from the MEC and, of course, the teams from the industrial parks and the SEZ. See you in a few minutes at 5 to 11. Thank you. to you, MEC, and then you can guide the responses to the various questions to the team that you are there with. Thank you, MEC.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair. I will suggest, with your indulgence, that we take the responses from the team, starting from the MEPCZ, and then I will be the last. The CEO of MEPCZ. Thanks.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chairperson and Honorable MEC. I think my questions directed to the SEZ, it relates to the nature of support that we provide, such that it doesn't attract corruption, and that I just want to make it clear to the committee that this nature of support is such that it's basically non-financial, in the sense that, for example, there are tax incentives that we are offering within the zone. So we have realized that the investors don't understand how these incentives works. As you know, that they're quite technical. So what we do is we arrange for workshops that are being conducted by SARS themselves, and they encourage us to bring the investors, tax consultants, as they always mention that we are not trained as tax consultants in our own spaces. So we convene such workshops in Pretoria, and we coordinate our investors, and that is beneficial to our investors. And the issue of the other support that we provide is the support just to indicate and open doors, in the sense that most of the investors don't know where to tap in terms of their OPEX budget. And one of the requirements of the SEZ is that you need to demonstrate that in terms of your state of readiness to operate within the zone, that you do have a OPEX budget. So we also provide them with the contact details of those funders, like the DTIC Black Industrials Funds. We work together with the DTIC in that regard, so that where we refer our investors. And where we provide letters of support, it's when we have done a proper due diligence because of the capacity problems that we have currently, that we even outsource that process, that we ensure that, you know, it's been interrogated by relevant skills like your legal and accounting firms that needs to look at these applications. So we are comfortable as such regarding that. There was, I think the second one was the issue of, I think it's a sort of rebates that we offer, where we request the investor to self-fund either their renovations or their top structure. This process is legit in the sense that the investors, in most cases, they go and loan funding, capital funding from the banks. I'll cite an example of Steinberg Park, which is operating within the zone. He has borrowed 68 million from the bank to build that structure. And they are building the structure on government land. They enter into a notarial lease, and this is captured clearly under the lease document, which is interrogated by their legal firm as well as our firm. But this, I must say that this is also beneficial to the state, because at the end of the term of the lease, that structure, that asset will belong to the government, but not to the investor. So I think it is clearly documented in terms of the legalities and the lease that manages that sort of an arrangement between the SEZ and the investor. In terms of the capacity of the zone to operate, just going on outward missions and looking at other SEZs that we benchmark with, like Yokuha, it takes time for the SEZs to fully operate at their own capacity. I always set an example, for example, that an SEZ doesn't be given a budget to go and build a school and that. However, you need to hunt for an investor. Along the way, they need to demonstrate that they are ready in terms of capital to operate, besides the factories and infrastructure that we provide to them. So this is quite a tedious process and it takes a while. Hence, it's quite critical that you source your investors out of your pipeline to have a healthy pipeline, really assist the SEZs. As we speak, we were designated, as mentioned, in a brownfield with existing factories which are dilapidated, as mentioned by the FDC. So I can say that the occupancy rate for now is still at a very infant stage, but looking at our pipeline, we are confident that it will be accelerated. And also once we are funded properly in terms of our capital budget, in ensuring that we've got proper property facilities management, we've got those assets are migrated and they're properly funded. I think those factories which has to be refurbished will also contribute to the acceleration of the development of the zone. Chairperson, I think from the SEZ, those were, unless I have missed some of the questions, I will then revert back to them. But I think from our side, those were the questions which were raised. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you very much. The Industrial Park CEO.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, there were a couple of questions. Let me go through them as they were asked. I think the first one was from Honorable Mbuyani, where a question was asked around targeting Black industrialists, women, and disabled people. Indeed, we have this as part of our targets to say we have to assist Black industrialists, we have to assist women, and we have to assist people disabled. It's part of what is targeted, and it's part of my targets that I cascade down to my team. That we have to, as we do work in terms of getting tenants in, or we do funding, make funding available, we specifically target Black industrialists, women, and people with disabilities. The second question, Chair, was around the alternative power supply for the parks. We are doing a test case with the intervention of the DTIC through what is called National Cleaner Production Center under the Eco-Industrial Program, where that solar photovoltaic installation in Phuthaditjhaba is currently being piloted. So once that works, and we are happy that it will take the load of Eskom, it will be rolled out throughout the park and also in the other parks in Botshabelo and Thaba Nchu as well. So we are seriously looking at green energy, Chair. And Honorable Malimecha asked a question. I think there was a question around own funds to upgrade the factories. And I think Mempo has answered that to a large extent. But if I can just elaborate a little bit around the safeguards we put around such a process to avoid what you refer to as state capture, is that where we've got an opportunity, we advertise and invite everybody via a process which is run independently. We just finished a process where we availed in the residential blocks of flats in Kwakwa. We advertised and people ran a process, and the most qualified people to run those flats have been awarded those head leases. So we make sure that we're not found wanting as far as process is concerned. So we try and run as clean as possible, and to avoid the corruption and the like. Also, Honorable Manager said he wanted to see massive funding of SMMEs. This is something that we want to do, and I think we can. We've got the systems in place and the processes. What we don't have is funding. But in that respect, Chair, we are opening and knocking on many doors. The latest one that we have now is the NEF and the IDC that want to start a core fund with the province, where they will put in money into a fund, and the province must put in matched rent for rent, and that money will be administered by the FDC to start massively making an impact in funding SMEs in the province. So there are things that we're doing around that, and hopefully, the next time we meet, we'll be giving statistics of what we have achieved, and pray and hope that this funding is made available. Honorable Mtaung, I note the fact that you echo that there must be oversight, a visit to go and see on the ground the things that we're speaking about. And I think for the MEC, you asked a question around qualifications of the board members that is employed. I think the MEC will speak a little bit about that. Honorable thing, the question that you asked is very important. Why was the degradation allowed to take place? These factories are from the 80s, and I think due to age, that has happened. And unfortunately, since 1994, like many of our public infrastructure, there has not been much money allocated towards the refurbishments, which is a little more than just the maintenance. Because as the committee would appreciate, if you have a car, you can maintain it. At some point, the engine fails, you need to replace major components and things like that. So this is what was required, is funding for these major components that have failed or that are now obsolete. So that funding has not been made available due to the competing allocation of funds to the social budget of the country. So we suffered the same fate as many other infrastructure-related type installation of the government. So what are we doing to make sure it doesn't happen again? So to the extent that we have upgraded and replaced major components and other things, we have asked for the budget, because these are still new installation, these new phases that we have. We have asked for the budget from this year, which hopefully will come, to make sure that we maintain what has been donated to us by DTIC via DBSA. So there is a process of making sure that we look after what has been donated to us and that we maintain them. But obviously in 20, 30 years' time, they will still need to be replaced again. So I think forward planning is going to be key and critical to making sure that we keep the infrastructure as it is. Chair asked a question, and the chair's question was around, if I can just, I want to open something here, Chair, just allow me a second. Is there a plan to attract more tenants in the parks, and also the numbers in terms of vacancies in the park? Chair, I just want to put context to this and say, in Phuthaditjhaba, so let me start with Botshabelo, for example. There's a total of 144 factories, and currently 103 are occupied. So there's 72% occupancy rate, and the 41 that are vacant, a lot of them, they need some work. They need some work to be done on them in order for them to be occupied. And we continue to look at alternatives between funding from the DTIC to private funding to upgrade this factory so that they're fully occupied. So 72% vacancy in Botshabelo, and in Phuthaditjhaba, Chair, that's where we've got a bit of a challenge. We have 296 factories, and currently there's only 178 that are occupied. So there's 118 that are not occupied. And the reason being that intermittent supply of water and electricity is proving it difficult for us to attract the tenants. We do get the tenants, but they don't move in because they worry about sustainability of their business without supply of water and electricity. So that's on top of the fact that a lot of them are derelict and they are not in a good condition. And but we that's why I was saying I'm hoping for Phuthaditjhaba that a Bloom Water and Eskom come to our aid and establish stable supply of water and electricity so we can take advantage of the pipeline that we have of tenants that want to go in. And in Tabanchu, it's a small park. There's only 8 factories. 4 of them are occupied and the other 4 are not. But there's a huge demand for the 4 that are there. But it's also a lot of vacant space that we can have other people put up their own structures on the loan lease. So those are my answers, Chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Then MEC Mohale.
Thank you very much once more, Chair. I'll start with the question asked by Honorable Mtaung on the qualifications or the the skills profile of the newly appointed board. I'll start with the chair, Mr. William Ngutu. Mr. Ngutu is a professional in the legal field. Is a property law specialist with over 19 years of experience in the field. One of his experiences, he has been the registrar of deeds in one of the northern provinces. He holds various qualifications from BProc, LLB, and he is a qualified governance professional by Chartered Governance Institute of South Africa, and all the other qualifications specializing in contracts and so on. He is now practicing for his own account, specializing in property and corporate governance. The deputy is Mrs. Gumede, who's a female, with a wide range of management, with a specialization area around the marketing and the stakeholder management, with a vast experience in the private sector, spanning of more than 15 years, part of which has been at Eskom, has worked with the SAMRAL. She holds a degree in social science from the University of the Free State and specialized degrees in enterprise risk and the project management. The third member is Dr. Mutlong, with a Master of Science in Business Analytics, and other masters in Business Administration, a specialist qualification diploma in property, who's also a medical practitioner of more than 30 years in practice as such, but has also been a CEO of a private entity specializing in the medical supplies and the medical consultancy. The other one is Mr. Lesekele, who's an IT professional, being a business analyst with more than 6 years in the IT space, with a BTech in project management, a diploma in business analytics, national diploma in IT, and a postgrad or the honors in business administration. The other one is Mrs. Mochwana, who holds a degree BCom in accounting, a postgrad diploma in business administration, a senior management development program, who also has more than 10 years in the finance and credit management field, having occupied various positions at senior management level, being a finance manager, regional manager, and all those other related finance qualifications. We still have one vacancy which we are awaiting the Department of Trade, Industry and Competition to forward the name, because in terms of the regulations, we need to have a representative from the DTIC. We hope that they will soon forward so that we can complete our board. That's how qualified and experienced that team that we have appointed, in line with what we have committed ourselves as the provincial government, that from now on will ensure that we appoint people that will really add value and try and be helpful to all the entities and the structures which we are putting in place. So we have tried to have that combination of the skills. But on the challenge, or one other issue I need to reflect is that majority of them are still very youthful. I think it's only Dr. Mweti who is in his 50s. The chair is in the 40s. The rest of the members are below 30, and the deputies in the late 30s. The rest are quite young, below 40, and some in the 30s. That has been our approach even with the board of the FDC, that we are trying to give young people with the skills a chance to bring that energy to effect a change. So we're moving towards a situation where we're being youthful in terms of our governance and management structures. But the other issue on the challenges that we face as a province in relation to the MEPCZ, I think is the funding model of the sector. The economic cluster is the only sector which does not have grants that devolves directly to provincial government as compared or relative to the others. Chair and the honorable members would remember that if you look at the social cluster, the provincial departments survive largely on the grants, being Department of Education, Social Developments, including human settlements. The money comes directly from national, and then they're able to. That is not the case with this important sector, which all the other sectors are reliant upon, because we always believe that if we can do well in the economic cluster, actually will make the work of everyone else much easier. We'll cut the long queues at social development, we'll cut the long queues at human settlements, people will be self-sustainable. But unfortunately, for whatever reason, this is a sector at the level of the provinces which get the smallest or none, if one may put it that way. The only reliance we have in terms of the national sphere is our working together with their agencies, with their own priorities, with their own authorities, which we have. The only power we have is the power of influence, but we may not be able to be certain as to say concretely out of this allocation to any of the DFIs, we want to ring-fence this to serve this particular purpose. We are unable to do that. So perhaps it's a debate for another day as to how then do we, in the long run, try and re-look into how the sector does not have a support, particularly at the level of the provinces. More so when in small provinces like the Free State, where the large chunk of the money, for obvious reasons, had to be prioritized to the social cluster because of the nature of the needs that people need. Kids have to eat at school now. We can't say, wait a bit, we are still growing the economy. So it's quite a very difficult matter, if one may reflect. So I think that's one of the biggest challenges. But even ourselves at the level of the province, we're trying hard to try and lobby so hard, and we are getting support, I must say, even from the legislature to say, executive, change the way you view your spending patterns, prioritize the economy. Everyone is echoing the same voice. So as and when we find a platform, we try to amplify that call that it's high time that government consciously prioritize in terms of funding the economic class. We have said ourselves as a province of the Free State that we are, our strength is with agriculture. We still believe that we have not optimized that. So we are consciously as a province trying to ensure that we develop agriculture, and the role that we play is to try and create the markets and opportunities. I must indicate that with the hostilities in the market, but we have tried as a level of the province, because we have had what is similar to Gauteng, what is normally known as a township bill. Ours has just been tabled this year in the legislature. Public participation is done. We should be able to entertain it. Hopefully in the new calendar year, we should be able to pass that law. One of the notable issues in relation to the current subject matter is that we are trying to close a gap between the mainstream economy and the small businesses. One honorable member correctly indicated that there needs to be more focus on the small businesses. One of the biggest challenges which we have listed in our approach to small business is the issue of the markets, because all these other investments that are done to support small businesses, if the mainstream economy is not creating opportunities for them, I can cite an example with those that are in the farming sector. They become the price takers, our poor farmers. In terms of the access to the silos, the price that they get their commodities in terms of price and so on. So I'm saying, as a level of the economic cluster, we need to provide an alternative and the markets and going directly there. And in all of this investment pipeline, as well as existing activities, we have started a process where we dissect every value chain to try and find where the small businesses can play a role. Because we are not just, our understanding is that they shouldn't, when these investments come, it's all about employment only. At the center for economic transformation drive is to create opportunities for small businesses to be self-sustainable so that they don't only rely on government as a source of the market. So it's one of the interventions through the legislative piece that we have tabled in the House to say, let's compel all businesses that come into the province and those that will do business with government, that they be compelled that certain percentage where they source their commodities should be from their small business, so as to create a demand for the production of small business. That's one. That second one, Chair, and the last is that the challenges facing the local government are impacting quite serious on the SEZ. One of the issues that we have to do interventions was also to assist the Maluti-A-Phofung, even in terms of our transformers, so that at least we can keep the lights on and the supply, not only for the zone, but also even for the nearby communities. So that unfortunate situation, complex as it is, unfortunately is not helping us. But to also try and mitigate some of the effects of those challenges over and above the challenges relating to economic infrastructure, we are also in line or within the context of the DDM. We have provided as a province a support to municipalities in terms of their economic plans, sector plans within their IDPs. And part of what it came out very clear that is that we're trying to find a way of we're guiding municipalities to have incentives policy, all municipalities in the province. We just hope that they will cooperate to a point where that is implemented. Because one of the difficulties in the Free State is that with all the challenges, it becomes very difficult for people to move from established cities where there is good infrastructure to move to the Free State, where on top of the problems is the issue of the cost of doing business. We have conducted a study. Indeed, it has demonstrated, for an example, like in Mangaung, where we have Botshabelo and Phuthaditjhaba industrial parks, the cost of services is the second or the third highest in the country. By far exceed Eguruleni, Cape Town, and all of those which have the industry. So one can just imagine if a person has to relocate from Kempton Park or Germiston in the heart of good infrastructure where there is skill and so on, having to come to Free State with an additional 500 kilometers, obviously a person would not even consider. So we are saying there needs to be at least one sweetener that will really bring or make people to consider, investors to consider the Free State as a choice. And we said, let it be built in the policy that every municipality knows that consciously, for purposes of job creation and economic stimulation, this is what we will offer for the investors, hoping that at least it can change the situation around, because Chair, we're quite worried that there is great disinvestment out of the province of the Free State. Had it not been of the zone, I think the situation could have been worse. At least with the little benefits like tax concessions and all of those, it has been able to keep some of those establishments still within the zone. But other than that, we are faced with a serious situation. That is why all of these creative measures, even legislatively, that we're trying to bring to the fore in order to mitigate and ensure that we don't close shop at the level of the economy in the province of the Free State. So those are just, in summary, at high level, the issues that also impacts on the SEZ, which we're trying, on the other hand, to try and bring some a sort of intervention, which I thought might be of interest to the committee. Of course, there are a number of many issues, interventions we are doing, but I thought this could just be relevant for now instead of just taking the time of the committee with the other ones. But other than that, I really like to thank the committee for these responses that we are able to give. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much. Can I just check with Mr. Molafani, and I see Mr. Claassen is also on the platform, whether you have anything to add? You may speak, Mr. Molafani.
Thanks, Chair. I must say that we appreciate the progress made in the Maluti-A-Phofung. For the longest time, we did not have a board, and this was quite concerning for us as the DTIC. So we'll be taking it offline with the MEC and the team just to find out how we can collaborate and make sure that the SEZ takes off the ground. At the moment, we have appointed the BSA to help us with the rollout of the infrastructure, while the province is building up its capacity in the SEZ. So we do really appreciate the progress made, and we'll engage further. Thanks, Chairperson.
Mr. Claassen.
Thank you, Chair. From the side of the industrial parks and the pursuit to also include the activities in the township economy, we have sought to collaborate with both the National Cleaner Production Center through our collaboration with UNIDO, which we have an MOU to assist us to look into the problems and challenges that were cited around the infrastructure and enumerating in detail all the other constraints within the park, such as the lack of consistent electricity. I think in the report, it's also cited the work that's been started to look at alternative forms of energy and quantifying what each business actually is losing in terms of water use, effluents that also get discharged. Sometimes, often we see in the parks that's not taken care of in their management of the waste material that comes from those, so that these parks ultimately have got to start now behaving according to the green eco industrial practices and methodology. Because as we see the patterns of now investors, they are looking for places or industries which now could meet and help them meet their premium demands in terms of what they would ultimately want to sell their products to. So there is this eco-industrial development approach that we've adopted, and we are helping, working with the industrial parks so that we can match those. We are also now revising the approach of how we support the industrial parks. One of the other industrial parks which was rejected, of course, was oftentimes there's lack of a strategy, whether it's a business case, to indicate to us how they are going to sustain even the provisions of the infrastructure that would be made available through the grant funding or incentive from the critical infrastructure. There has been some cases through a report that was also published of how some of those elements and components which were funded by the state end up being vandalized, and others, sometimes you find buildings being underutilized. So there is a need to look holistically into how do we develop the parks, considering the ecosystem of where that industry is located. With that, we mean we've got to be sensitive to also community participation. We are now also doing a study undertaking the various small industries that are operating in the townships. Through that, we would be able now to locate these within precincts in the industrial parks themselves. So give opportunities for those companies that would be manufacturing and adding value to their project, but in a place where they can now have access to markets, formal, trading areas, and also being able to maximize opportunities to access some of the value chains, which otherwise sometimes are provided for by well-established companies. So the view now is to bring in what we call a township manufacturing precinct within the industrial parks, which the CEO also touched on some of the elements there too. Will try and ring fence those, put the security, whilst we are working broadly with the industrial park. This is a way in which we think it will give a value, a shared value to the communities, which are critical, of course, in making sure that we build a sustainable industrial ecosystem where these parks are located. Our ongoing work currently has got to do a study which also is taking consideration what we have now, together with National Treasury, frameworked a path to address some of the deficiencies that have been raised. Key amongst those, it's how these industrial parks have been governed through some of the agencies. We need to see that all the rentals that are collected in these industrial parks go back to the industrial parks. And we can't shy away from that challenge, which is currently existing, not only in Botshabelo, but across all the other industrial parks. Just as an example, Chair, we have now concluded on some of the modalities with Gauteng, Northwest, and Mpumalanga, and we are now rolling, and KZN as well. We are now rolling it out to other provinces in terms of then structuring how those accruals in terms of rentals are then taken back to service the clientele inside. Most of these industrial parks, they are also having huge bills to Eskom. So we want to see that those kind of patterns which erodes the potential of investment is kept at the earliest point. And we know that time is due because most of the companies are now leaving, considering that they have got these challenges. But we are now attending it jointly. We work with various like departments like the National Treasury. We work with the provincial structures of the district development model so that these are not taken through a piecemeal approach. Department of Small Business Development is also on board in terms of addressing those issues that are related to individual SMMEs and enterprises as well. So we're looking forward to that. We will be producing a model, but also that illustrates currently case studies that are reforming how we should approach the revitalization of these industrial parks so that they can contain the jobs that already they have and then expand them further. It is worth noting that of the 13 to 15 parks that we have done so far, they currently employ above 45,000 people. And the critical aspect that's been raised in our discussions with National Treasury is the constraints that the municipalities are facing. If we are not addressing them through the industrial parks, it will easily erode those numbers because the municipalities and the parks are not able to meet their bill in terms of electrification. Hence, then also the issue of how do we look for, alternative forms of energy, solar, amongst those, so that we can address them. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much for those remarks, Mr. Klassen and Mr. Molefani. So the committee, just in conclusion, we are doing oversight over the SEZs and the industrial parks as part of our program of this committee. So sometimes it's physical oversight, like it was in April this year when we went to Mpumalanga. And then in September this year, we did a similar exercise with Limpopo on the industrial parks and SEZs. And I think after this presentation, members have expressed the need for us to do a physical oversight. So we will continue to oversight SEZs and industrial parks as a portfolio committee. And then we will also look at how we as a portfolio committee can, in our program for 2023, do a physical oversight and to check on progress, because there were very many challenges that were tabled here, some of them big, some of them not so big, but I think we need to get it right if we look at the reason why we have SEZs and industrial parks. We need investment, 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 both domestic and foreign investment, so that we can grow the economy and secure jobs. So may I take this opportunity to thank the MEC and his team from the SEZ and the industrial parks for your presence here in the meeting today. Thank you very much. Can I ask the committee secretary to share with us the program for the PC tomorrow?
Thank you, Chair. Chair, the committee is scheduled to engage with the NCC tomorrow on the annual report and the first quarter financial and non-financial performance. Then the committees can also consider some minutes, and there may be some committee business that needs to be addressed. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. And we also note for the record that the Honourable Burns Nxamashe has submitted a written apology to the committee, so that is recorded. Thank you very much, members. We see each other in the House later on. Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you, Chair.
Long live the chair, long live the chair.
Long live the chair, long live the chair.